Hello, this is Dave Travels Through Time, Channel 2 again, and today I'm doing my final verdict. I'm going to talk about the Trial of Time Lord, what I've seen, the whole thing. I'm going to give my final verdict on the whole thing. So Mysterious Planet. Basically, the Doctor, is taken on trial, through into a Time Lord space station. There's that cool opening shot, and then he arrives in the Gallifreyan space station. On the Gallifreyan space station, he meets the Valyard, played by Michael Jaston. Then he encounters the Inquisitor, played by Lyndon Bellingham, and he's basically put on trial because he is accused of, very major offenses, according to them, and the Valyard is the prosecutor. And of course, the first adventure is about Ravalox, and about, his interference with what he does. So basically, he's taking the first story in this is Ravalox. Him and Perry land there, and he finds, Perry realizes too that's very familiar, and they realize that will soon be planet. It is Earth, but a few light years moved. So basically, Perry, it's too much for her. She wants to head back to the TARDIS. Sixth Doctor investigates further, and then of course he meets people in Marble Arch, and then of course Perry gets captured by the Queen Katrika people, and the Doctor meets, Balazar, and he meets Balazar, and overall, this story, and then he meets Murdine. So what do I think of this story? So I gave this final rating, I believe, a 7.5. This was one of Robert Holmes' final Doctor Who stories he ever wrote. Glitz is, of course, excellent. Tony Shelby. He's kind of like the bounty hunter type, kind of con artist type. And, of course, there's Drathro, who's called the Immortal One, but he's actually just a robot. And but they call him the Immortal One, the humans in there. So that was interesting. And of course, the Doctor's realizing that certain things are being bleeped out, and because the Valyard saying, "Oh, it can only be the Inquisitor can only see it," but then she wants to see evidence as well. What was the talk between Glitz and Dimmer about the secrets? So that goes on, and of course, as luckily the Doctor is able to prevent any more damage, and then Drathro is destroyed, courtesy of Glitz and Dimmer, and he is done for. And it's a pretty good story. There are a few moments where it does drag a bit. I do like the theme song. Some people don't like it, but I enjoy it for what it is. I mean, Dominic, the one who did the theme song, only had a week to prepare this theme song. So I think for what it's worth, I thought he did a pretty good job. So overall, it's an enjoyable little story. It's not perfect. It's not one of Robert Holmes' all-time best, but it's good for decent for what it is. And then we go to Mind Warp, which is known as, this one's a bit of an intense story. Get into that. So basically, the Doctor and Perry arrive on Thoris Beta, which is home of the Mentors. And of course, in between there, the Doctor and Perry encounter Syl again, because he's a mentor. And basically, the whole plot is Lord Kiv, the other mentor. He's, the head mentor. He needs his mind transferred into another body because his body's dying. And then, of course, we meet, King Arcanos, and then, played by Brad Blessed, who also appeared in the Flash Gordon films. His character, he's very loud, very boisterous character. And, he always wants to fight. So he's an interesting character. So basically, the Doctor, appears to betray Perry and King Arcanos by appearing to side with the Mentors, but it's all on the cover, essentially. But of course, the Valyard's using that against the Doctor, saying, well, you look at what you've done, look at what all you've caused here, by doing this. And then, he was, the Doctor points out, that the moment happened where he interrogated Perry. Yes, it happened, but didn't happen as it appears here. It was totally different. It's somehow being fabricated. So we get the first real mentions of the Matrix perhaps being tampered with. We'll get into more of that I'll get more into that shortly. So basically, at the end, the Doctor appears to help, King Garcelos, and he wants to rescue Perry from Dr. Crozier from transporting Kiv's mind into Perry's body. Well, it appears at the end that basically, at the end of the story, Perry's Ward Kiv is in Perry's body. It appears that she is dead. That she's been taken over by Kiv, and then at the end, the Time Lords, right before the Doctor could save her from the happening, it appears, the Doctor's, teleported out, and into the space station, and the Doctor is of course horrified at the end. King Garcelos basically shoots, Syl, and then of course Kiv in Perry's body, and the Doctor's horrified that Perry's been killed courtesy because the Time Lord wouldn't let the Doctor save her. And that's the end, and he wants to find out what this is all about, and he's horrified by it and, disgusted. And then we begin to the next story, Terror of the Vervoids, which this is set into the future. This is my quibble with this, since it's set in the future after the trial, it basically means, okay, the Doctor's found innocent anyway. So kind of a major spoiler there. Unless to his point, maybe it's a possible future after. Anyway, the Doctor's with Mel, the new companion now, and she's basically making him exercise, on the exercise bike, and he drink carrot juice, which he absolutely hates carrot juice, and basically they get a stress call, and they're sent to the Hyperion 3. And then of course the Doctor recognizes the Commodore, but before he was Captain Trevor's, not Commodore, but he had been promoted at this point. And of course, the Doctor, the Commodore is wondering what he's doing there. Usually, there's always trouble where the Doctor goes. Happens to be trouble, and then of course, there are all these mysterious deaths going on. And then of course, we find out what happens with that. So, I mean, I don't think it's a terrible story. It has moments in here. I think Pip and Jane Baker get a bit of too much hate, I think. I think it's a decent enough story. There are, some things in here that could have been done better. But on the whole, there's enjoyable moments in here. Professor Alaski is, of course, played by Honor Blackman, who had also appeared in Goldfinger, the James Bond movie. And of course, the one who turns out to be the major traitor behind the whole murders and working with the Vervoid, creating the Vervoids as they are, is Doland. He is the traitor, even though it appears the Rudge at first. You think, oh, okay, he's basically just a crew member gone rogue because he's tired of being treated unfairly. But he gets killed off when there's gas in the spaceship when it's headed towards a black hole. So yeah, the Vervoids are an interesting group of creatures, very planty, kind of the first plant life creature, Doctor Who villains, if you want to call them that, since the Crinoids and the Seeds of Doom with Tom Baker's story. Yeah, so on the whole, not a classic Doctor Who story by any means, but it does have enjoyable moments for it. So yeah, I'll give it a 7. Mind Warp a 7.5. Mysterious Planet, I'll give it a 6.5, maybe 7. And then we get to Ultimate Foe, which is, I quite like Ultimate Foe a lot because it has the famous speech of the Sixth Doctor. Basically what happens in this one, this was the last story of Robert Holmes before he unsadly died. And then Pip and Jane Baker were brought in to finish the story. So basically, the Doctor, is being found accused of genocide because of what happened with the Vervoids. Their total elimination of the whole species to save the humans in the Hyperion 3. So basically, the Master teleports Glitz and Mel to the trial room in the space station. as witnesses. The Master is actually helping the Doctor, weirdly enough, in this. And the Master tells them about the secrets and how Earth was moved. And it was all a plot by the High Council. And then the Doctor, does his famous speech about how corrupt the Time Lords are, how evil. And then if he hadn't found the secret, they would have been held secret for several centuries. Then the Master tells the Doctor about who the Valeyard is. Apparently, he's a future incarnation, amalgamation of his darker sides, somewhere between his 12th and final incarnation. So basically, he is the Doctor, but a darker future version of him. Then the Valeyard escapes, and then the Doctor and Glitz have to go after him in the Matrix. And then, of course, we get that ending shot of, him going in the sand of part 1, and then he screams. That was quite an effective cliffhanger. So now it's a different writers, Pip and Jane. Baker brought in because Robert Holmes had died. Then we get, Glitz thinks the Doctor's dead, but he comes off the sand fine. It was just another illusion. And then the Valeyard appears, and then he talks to him for a little bit. And then later on, the Doctor and Glitz head into the Master's TARDIS. It appears that the Master's controlling him, controlling the Doctor. And then, the Master's own Glitz all these treasures he can have if he helps him. Basically, the whole reason is he wants to, the Doctor to help him defeat the Valeyard because he's a greater threat than even the Doctor at this point. So that was interesting. And then, of course, we get Mr. Popowik, who is also, I'll tell you in a little bit. Basically, another thing I forgot to mention was the Doctor has to sign his remaining regenerations. He signs it on a piece of paper. Hi, Sadaka. Welcome. Well, how are you? Just doing a review here. Hope you're well. You're doing pretty good. So basically, he signs it. So that was in part 1 of the Ultimate Foe. I forgot to mention that, but I just thought I'd bring that in. So on the whole, and then basically in the middle of it, the Master reveals, that was in part 1 actually, that Perry somehow, of the Ultimate Foe, that Perry somehow, she's married to King Arcanos. All that was a fabrication. She wasn't, dead, and her body, Lord Kiv having the body of her, that never happened apparently, according to the Master, and that she's married with King Arcanos and they're doing just fine. So that was interesting. I think it would have been nice. I would have preferred if maybe Perry had appeared or something. The Master had her come down to or at least had a video recording of her saying I'm good or something. Because to me, I don't know. It is the Master. Do we really know for sure she actually survived? I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not saying the other one's not a fabrication. It probably is, but do we really know what happened? I mean, after all, it is the Master. Do we fully trust all the details? If they were going to reveal Perry was still alive, they should have done it properly. They should have had her as the witness rather than Mel. I agree. Yeah, that's one of the critiques I got to give to it too, is they should have had Perry rather than Mel be the witness with Glitz. I think that's the way it should have been done. But it didn't. They just had Mel, which to me is just freaking strange because he hadn't met Mel at that point. So it's just, it's like a whole timey-wimey mess. Because I used a New Who reference, sorry. But it's just a whole mess, I'll just say. Because he hadn't met Mel properly yet at that point, because it's set before Vervoids. It's this whole confusing mess with that. That's confusing. But anyway. So. But anyway, on to part 2 again. So basically, Popowik turns out to be the Valeyard. He reveals it. The Doctor figured out at this point. It's the Valeyard. He takes off the mask disguise. Then there's that whole thing about the megabyte modem and all that stuff. Again, I feel like this whole part 2 because part 1 I did enjoy parts of it, but part 2 is just towards the end of it is just all over the place. It's just all over the place. The megabyte modem and all that stuff. Oh, man. I've never been able to resist a touch of the Grand Guignol. Have we? Yeah, I remember that line. Valliard said that. Yeah, so again, it could have been better if Holmes had finished it. If Holmes had finished it, it'd be a bit better. But, you know, yeah, I mean, it's not bad. It's still pretty good. I mean, there's just a few moments in between it that kind of are a little bit over. But it's still enjoyable for what it is. It's one of the more entertaining, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah. And so basically, at the end, the doctor's found innocent. He's allowed to, and then he wants Glitz to have, you do whatever you want with the master. I don't care, but be light on Glitz, And then at the end, they leave, and then, he's offered the presidency again, and he's like, no, I have a better idea. Why don't you, Inquisitor, you could be I'll nominate you as the potential new president. So that ended like that. And basically, she's talking about the carrot juice. Mel's talking about the carrot juice and the workout return. And he's like, the doctor's like, perhaps I should accept that presidency after all. So that was funny. So these are the last moments of Colin Baker in live action. He'll only be in Big Finish after that. And then at the very, very end, it's revealed that the Keeper has been murdered and the Valliard has taken his place. That's the end. And then the Valliard does this creepy laugh. And then that's the end of the Trial of the Time Lord. End of the season. So I actually kind of did like that ending with the, him, turns out to be the Keeper at the end, taking over. That I found creepy, and I actually kind of like that. So yeah, it's not bad for what it is, and Jason does a good job as the Valliard. He's certainly creepy and sinister. So on the whole, if I were to rank this season on a whole, it's a mixed bag. It's certainly watchable. I wouldn't call it an all-time classic season for sure. I would say it's, there's highs and lows for it for sure. So what am I going to rank this thing? Let me think. I am going to rank it I'm definitely not going to rank it a 10. I'm going to rank it a 7 maybe. We'll give it a 7 on the whole. I still need to listen to the Trial of the Valliard. I've heard good things about that. It's kind of like a sequel to this, even though I know the audios aren't considered to be canon to the TV stuff. I'm kind of still curious about it. I don't know. What would you rank it, Sadaka? What would you say? 6? Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's not like a bit inessential. Probably 6. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, one of my favorites is that I haven't seen in a while is the Key to Time season. That's probably like one of my all-time favorite seasons, like total seasons. I really enjoyed that. I want to get that at some point. But yeah, 7's for me, and Sadaka's is a 6. Cool. For me, Doctor Who was never as good as after Tom left. True. But yeah, I already knew that. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the seasons in the 80s where they had their highs and their definite lows for sure. Even though I'm a fan of the 80s stuff, I even admit there's some highs, but there's definitely some lows. So yeah. That's my review of Trial of the Time Lord, the whole season. So basically, and then next time I'll probably do, well, if I were to do this in order, I guess I'll do Time and the Ronnie. But of course, the famous opening shot, and I mean this sarcastically, of the TARDIS being blasted, what looks like a Fleischer cartoon from Superman animation, where he's fired upon, and then it, lands on the planet of Akersa, and then we of course see the shot of Sylvester McCoy in the Colin Baker curly wig, where it's so kind of obvious. It's so hilarious. Honestly, I can laugh about it though. It's so bad, almost I can laugh about it. I don't know why. That opening shot is, my gosh. But anyway, enough about that. I was reviewing Trial of the Time Lord, and I got off track there for a second. Sorry. So anyway, all right. So that's my review of Trial of the Time Lord. All right, guys. Thanks to Daco for coming on. And that's my review. Take care. If you like and if people see this later, if you like what you see, I do reviews, I do watch-alongs, I do impressions, improv stuff. I'm going to do another silent movie. I think The Phantom Carriage is the one TARDIS Time wants me to do, so I'm going to be doing that one. Because I did Huntsback last week. That was fun. All right, guys. Take care. Peace. Bye for now.
Now you got to do the lullaby.